Let me ask you this. Why do you think that Chicago has become America's largest outdoor shooting range? Do you think it's because of Chicago citizens who have no criminal record, but who have lawfully a gun in their home for protection or perhaps for hunting? Or do you think it's because of a finite group of criminals who have rap sheets as long as King Kong's arm?
So Mississippi, Louisiana, and Missouri actually have higher firearm death rates. Obviously, there's certain...
What about Chicago?
So I don't live in Chicago. It's not my primary area of research.
You don't have an opinion on that?
I think there's easy access to firearms combined with environmental conditions, lack of great education. There have actually been studies showing that when you green vacant lots and repair abandoned buildings in urban neighborhoods, you see decreases in gunshots, in violence, as well as in stress and depression in the neighborhoods around them.
No disrespect, Doc, but that sounds a lot like word salad to me.
Tell you what, it is always nice to watch Republicans' Fox News auditions backfire in real time. Here, Senator John Kennedy pivots to the usual punching bag of Chicago to claim some moral high ground on gun violence, despite the fact that he represents the state with the second highest firearm mortality rate in the entire nation, just behind Mississippi. The lack of self-awareness would be embarrassing if it wasn't so predictable. Kennedy even tries to save himself by asking about Chicago specifically when the witness, Dr. Rennie, explains that his own state has a higher firearm mortality rate. So let's dig into that exact issue. With the most recent data available, Chicago has a firearm mortality rate of 29 per 100,000. All the while, Louisiana has a rate of 29.1 per 100,000. So if Kennedy was looking for an out by pivoting to the most dangerous big city in Illinois, he did himself no favors considering that city's rate simply matches the rate in Kennedy's entire home state. But hey, keep going, Senator. You're doing great. And of course, all of this is underscored by the fact that Republicans are doing absolutely nothing to keep anyone safe at the hands of guns. I get that the John Kennedys of the world love to perform for the cameras, but beyond that, a single bill, a single idea, a single fix? If these people are trying to show that they care, then they might want to consider actually, doing something to prove it. And by the way, if Kennedy wants to shine a spotlight on death rates, then let's look at the numbers. According to a comprehensive study from Third Way, per capita murder rates are on average 40% higher in the states that Trump won compared to those that Biden won. In fact, 8 of the top 10 worst murder rate per capita states voted for Trump in 2020. But let's go further into the cities. Republican-led Jacksonville, Florida has a per capita murder rate more than 3 times higher than New York City. Tulsa, Oklahoma and Oklahoma City both have per capita murder rates that triple and double, respectively, that of New York City. Bakersfield and Fresno each have Republican mayors and have higher per capita murder rates than Los Angeles or San Francisco. So while Democrat-led cities like Chicago do have high murder rates, so do plenty of Republican-controlled cities. And look, I get that blindly pointing to the cities as a catch-all for Democratic policy failure is easy, but Republicans have nothing to brag about and should probably worry about cleaning up not only their own cities, but their states too. And just to build on that, it doesn't look like it's trending in the right direction in red states either. The state with the highest percent increase in per capita murder rate, Wyoming, with a 91.7% increase. The second highest state, South Dakota, with a 69% increase. In fact, 6 of the top 10 states with the highest percent increases in per capita murder rates are red states. And besides Wyoming and South Dakota, include Nebraska, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Kansas. Not exactly liberal bastions, are they? You know which states aren't even in the top 10? New York or California or Illinois, all of the right's favorite punching bags. Perhaps it might be time for some new talking points. But let's take a look at the specific issue of guns. First of all, I know that Republicans love to point to Chicago, so it would probably behoove us to ask where the majority of guns come from that have allowed crime to rise there. Turns out that 60% of firearms come from other states with decidedly lax gun restrictions. So I get that it's convenient to pretend that Chicago is some neat little example of Democratic failure, but crime wouldn't be a fraction of what it is in that city if it weren't for all the easily available weapons in surrounding Republican-led states. And let's look at firearm mortality mortality by state, since we're on the topic of guns. Of the 15 states with the highest firearm mortality rates, 13 are Republican. And look, none of this is to say that crime isn't an issue in a number of these states and cities across the country, but to frame crime as a uniquely Democratic problem is not only outdated, it is outright wrong. But the issue here isn't about where the problems are bad, because gun violence has led to bad outcomes everywhere. We know it's bad. We're past that part. The point now is what's being done to fix it. It is easy to point to Chicago and complain, but knowing that people are dying in Chicago, and by the way, Bakersfield and Fresno and Tulsa and Oklahoma City, you either have solutions or you refuse all of the solutions. And if you refuse them, then the only possible explanation is that you are fine with the status quo, which means daily mass shootings and gun violence across the country. So John Kennedy can grandstand for the cameras at Senate hearings all he wants, but the simple fact is that he has not done anything to actually fix anything, to change anything. If he's trying to prove that he's some champion on this issue, then do something, anything, to show it. Pass a background checks law, pass a red flag law, raise the age to own a gun to 21, close the Charleston loophole, have some spine and pass an assault weapons ban. And if you're not willing to do any of that, I'm sorry, but you don't get to get on your soapbox about gun violence during your little hearings. And that was a point that Jamie Raskin brought up in our latest interview. Moving over to the House, Speaker Johnson has now indicated that he's throwing his support behind the Biden impeachment effort because apparently he enjoys the masochism. So what was your reaction to hearing that the abject humiliation that was this impeachment effort just got Speaker Johnson's blessing?
Well, I mean, he's got a 4-vote majority. If and when George Santos goes next week, that's down to a 3-vote majority. We've seen repeatedly it's ungovernable on the Republican side. And so he, like his predecessors, is just selling off large parts of the farm. And so there are people who want to pursue the, impeachment theater of the absurd. But there, of course, is nothing there, after thousands and thousands of pages of documents and beg records and suspicious activity reports. They haven't laid a glove on Joe Biden. And everything seems to be, blowing up in their face. They just keep stepping on the rake no matter where they go. So it doesn't trouble us, except that at a time of so many serious problems in the world, in our country, we could be doing real legislation. There's real work that could be done. I mean, the gun violence crisis alone should be commanding our attention after yet another nightmare of a massacre in Maine. But the Republicans just don't want to do anything, thoughts and prayers, but no action and no legislation.
So beyond the theatrics, focus on what these elected officials do rather than what they say. They have the power to bring about change in this country at a time when it is so desperately needed. Whether they actually exercise that power for good will do all the talking for them. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.